What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. Loaded episode for you this week. We're bringing in our good friend, three-time Super Bowl champion, James White, to tell us just how impressed he's been by Drake Maye through 7 games of the 2025 season. But also, he's going to share some insight into how TreVeyon Henderson, that guy over my right shoulder, might be feeling right now as a rookie, specifically in this Josh McDaniels offense. How lucky are we that we get to really dig into the past as well as the present when we have players who have played for Josh McDaniels for so many years as White has, and so he can lend so much insight into what somebody like Henderson, who hasn't had the start to the season that everybody's expected from him, is going through. Great conversation there. You're going to want to make sure that you stick around for that. But before we get to it, let's do a quick update on Drake Maye's MVP standing as things stand here today, shall we? Because I think you could make the argument that he should be the front runner. Number 1 in the league in completion percentage. Number 1 in the league in EPA, expected points added. Now, that includes his scrambles, but no quarterback in football has helped his team score more points than Drake Maye. He's also tops in the league when it comes to completion percentage over expectation. So you can make the argument he's been the most accurate quarterback in football as well. That, to me, sums up value at the most valuable position in sports. Now, the question is he going to be able to sustain? Can he do this against one of the best defenses in football this weekend in the Cleveland Browns? Unbelievable front there, and the Cleveland Browns are one of the best in football at forcing quarterbacks to get rid of the football quickly. They're actually second best in the league in terms of time to throw for opposing quarterbacks. 2.63 seconds on average. Opposing quarterbacks got to have the football out of their hands against this Jim Schwartz defense. So, to me, the biggest and most important matchup of this weekend might not even necessarily be Drake Maye against what the Browns are doing on the defensive side. It might be Drake Maye against his own instincts. He's so good at pushing the ball down the field, the best in football at throwing the ball 10 yards or more beyond the line of scrimmage. He's completing 67% of those passes. Unbelievable, remarkable. But is he going to be able to do that against a front that's going to get after him? Or is he going to have to be a little bit of that check down Charlie, which he said he didn't want to be immediately after the Titans game last week? Is he going to have to be a little bit more comfortable with that quick game and making sure that that football is out of his hands? Is he going to have to be a little bit better than he was in Tennessee of going through his reads at a rapid rate? Because there were times where it looked like it was one read and run from Drake Maye against the Titans, and he left some meat on the bone, surprisingly, on a day when he went 21 for 23. I know it sounds crazy, but he said it after the game, and he was right if you go back and look at the film. So can he tamp down those instincts to want to be that big game hunter, which has helped make him as effective and as efficient as he's been? Does he have to, in some ways, dial that down just a little bit against an aggressive front in order for this Patriots offense to have success on Sunday? One player who could help him in the short passing game, if he gets on the field enough, would be TreVeyon Henderson, the kind of guy you could throw it short and he could take a nice long run after catch to help your offense. We'll see. Doesn't look like things are necessarily trending in the right direction. We're going to ask our buddy James White why that's happening and what Henderson can do to turn the tide. Let's get to our chat with James White right now. There he is, the assistant running backs coach at Illinois, as well as one of the co-hosts of the Money Down podcast. James White, thanks so much for being back with us on Next Pats here. It's great to see you.
No problem, man. Appreciate you having me, Phil. Always a good time.
James, I don't know how much you've heard about just how next level Drake Maye has gone, but I know you do pay attention, and I know you've been watching. What have you made of his start to this point in the season where it feels like every single week he's at the top of a new list that includes Dan Marino and Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady? It's been absurd, the streak that Drake Maye is on through 7 games here.
It's been extremely impressive. He looks in control, not trying to do too much, taking the profit, scrambling, being decisive, seeing the coverages extremely well, great deep ball accuracy. And I knew Josh McDaniels would be great for him, but I think he's even exceeding my expectations in his second year, about halfway through the season. So it's been a lot of fun to watch.
It's remarkable the down the field stuff that we've seen, James, and you played obviously with the greatest of all time in Tom Brady, but I saw a number today that said his passer rating on throws that go 10 yards or more beyond the line of scrimmage is actually the best in the NFL if the season were to end today, which I know it won't. But the best in the NFL, he's over 140 with the quarterback rating, and that actually is the best since they started tracking this in 2016. Since 2016, when Tom Brady, I thought, should have been MVP that year. He wasn't because he missed the first 4 games of the season, suspended. But you were part of that team. How dialed in must Drake Maye be right now if he's that accurate down the field based on just how intimately you were involved with Tom Brady throwing the ball down the football back in 2016?
That just means he's comfortable with the game plans. He knows where his reads are, pre-snap, post-snap. And you can see it when he's throwing the ball, it's extremely effortless. He's seeing the coverages, whether he has to check it down, whether he has to, get a whole shot in cover 2, which he's done quite a few times this year. It's been extremely fun to watch. You're like, I said, I don't want to jinx him with the way he's playing, but he's playing like a MVP type player right now. And I just hope he continues that throughout the year because the team's going to go as he goes. As every team, you're going to go, as well as your quarterback is playing. But Josh has been doing a great job with them. And I think the players around him are playing well too. Each week is somebody different making an impact on the game.
James, I just got finished saying that, I do think, as well as Drake Maye's playing, eventually this season, I think he's going to need TreVeyon Henderson. I think he's going to need that outlet. I know Ramondre Stevenson can catch the football too, but I think just having that explosive option where you can throw it maybe a yard or maybe even behind the line of scrimmage and maybe end up getting a big play from that could end up being critical to this team's chances as they play more competitive games towards the end of the season. What do you think TreVeyon Henderson needs to do in order to show the coaching staff that he's an indispensable piece to this offense, because it feels like his role has been going in the wrong direction the last couple of weeks here?
Well, they can just continue to show it in practice, in the meeting rooms, be able to translate, what they're implementing in the game plan and the walkthroughs, executing in practice. And then when you get your opportunities, whether it's 1, whether it's 5, whether it's 10 snaps in a game, whether it's protection, catching the ball, running the ball, you just make the most of the opportunities that you get. And I said he hasn't played a ton over the last several weeks, but I don't think it's really that big of an issue. I think last week in Tennessee, the emphasis was to get the run game going. You can tell in the first drive they gave Ramondre a ton of carries to get the game going because they wanted to establish a run game. It hadn't been going great, so far this year, so they probably leaned into Ramondre a little bit more. As we all know, like with Josh, our game plan was always kind of a week-to-week thing, so he may not have played that much this past week. Maybe next week he gets a ton of snaps. It just all depends how they want to attack the defense they're going up against. So I don't think maybe necessarily it's a trust issue. I think it's just a game plan thing, and eventually his time will come. Like I said, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, whatever it may be. Because, look, I didn't play much my rookie year. I didn't play really until halfway through my second year. So, and I know Shane Vereen was kind of a similar type of thing. Didn't play necessarily, too much in his first year. That's just the way it goes for some guys. Some rookies come in and make an immediate impact right away, which, most of us expected him to do. But I'm sure at some point his number get called a lot.
Well, and like you, I'm speaking to a record-setting back in the Big Ten, right, who made the leap to the pro game and, like you said, didn't play much right away. TreVeyon Henderson had an unbelievable career at Ohio State. He's a second-round pick, and so I think that is leading to some of the expectations that have been heaped on his shoulders early in his career. But just how different, even coming from the Big Ten, right? That's the highest level. It's Big Ten and SEC. Like you assume those guys are essentially playing like minor league NFL football as collegians, and then okay, maybe the speed of the game ain't all that different once they become pros. But how much different is it? How much different was it for you going from Wisconsin to the Patriots?
Obviously, Big Ten, SEC, those conferences, really good football players. But once you get into the NFL, it's like all the best players from all of those conferences are all, on teams, and you got veteran guys that have played a long time, and everybody's smarter. Everybody knows how to attack your weaknesses and that things of the nature. So you just try to find ways to improve your game, or build the trust in your teammates and the coaching staff to show that you can go out there and do it. So it takes time, man. It's hard for I know rookies have come in and took the lead by storm in year one, but it's harder to walk in there and expect guys to just dominate from, week one going forward. So I think he's extremely talented. He's going to be a great football player for the organization, whether it's this year, next year, whenever his time comes. I just think everybody's had lofty expectations based on where he was drafted and what we saw on tape, but it will happen at some point.
Well, and in the passing game, that's where he was, not only was he drafted high, but he was so impressive this summer. And it wasn't just, check downs or little outlets or, screen game. It was down the field. He's making plays in practice in some of these preseason games. And I know, James, hopefully this gives you, a little boost, a little pep in your step right before you're about to head out to practice for Illinois. But he told me just the other day, he watched a ton of James White film. And, man, it just felt like he told me that guy was creating separation every time he was asked to run a route. He was in awe of James White. And so he's tried to implement some of your moves into his game. What does that mean for you? And do you see him being able to eventually, when he's given the opportunity, execute on those types of routes that you were able to run?
Of course, that's pretty cool, man. Whenever a young player is watching your tape to find ways to improve his game, that's always extremely dope. Because I did the same thing with Shane Vereen, with, Deion Lewis, with, the Danny Woodheads, the Kevin Falks, all those guys, whether it's Josh showing the tape or myself watching the tape of what they've done in the past and how we can implement it in our offense. I mean, the more you can learn, the better. And like I said, he's way more explosive. He's faster, than I ever was and I ever will be. So, look, he can really take it to a whole nother level because he has the speed and the explosiveness to take it, 70, 80 yards at any given point. So he's got what it takes, man. Like I said, it takes time at times, and when this opportunity comes, I know he'll be ready.
Well, and as he's trying to get himself ready to contribute as a receiver, he also has to be ready to contribute as a pass protector, too. That was something that you were asked to do a whole lot of. Just speaking to him a little bit earlier this year was something that I think he felt a little bit frustrated by just because that was such a strength of his game. And you and I talked about it right after he was drafted, just how physical he was as a pass protector and burying guys, linebackers, putting them in the dirt. What do you think, James, especially in this Josh McDaniels offense, what's the most challenging part of being a pass protector at that position? Is it just the sheer physical nature of it and 250-pound linebackers with a head of steam coming at you? Or is it the mental side and understanding where to be and when? What did you find to be the biggest challenge in that phase of the game for you?
Well, I don't think it's too much mentally, but once you get all the adjustments from the offensive line and all the adjustments that you have as running backs, and whether it's you're actually pass protecting or whether you're free releasing, what you need to look for if you're hot and all that stuff. Once you get that down packed, then it just comes down to getting the job done of blocking the guy who's in front of you or blocking the DB who's blitzing, across the line of scrimmage, which he did an excellent job at in college. And I did the same thing. I was a good pass protector in college, but once I got to the NFL, my rookie year, I wasn't as good, but because obviously there's better players, guys know how to, attack, backs and one-on-one blitz pickup and all that stuff. He has the want to, he has the physicality to do it, but you can't always. He went for a lot of knockout shots in college. You're not going to always do that, in the NFL. These guys are, especially linebackers now, they're not as big. They're dang near the same size as running backs a lot of times. So they're shifty. They know how to use their hands. They make moves. So it just continue to work on your technique. And then once you do it once, and once he does it once, you just get that confidence. Once you do it once in the game, then he's going to just keep it rolling throughout the rest of his career.
Let's get really in the weeds with the pass protection thing. This will be the last thing I ask you, James. And now as a coach, I just wonder, what some of the rules are. I'm sure it differs from place to place. But one thing that I have noticed this year, and it didn't necessarily happen against the Titans, but in the two games before that, there were a couple of moments where, and I think it was Ramondre Stevenson on both counts, where he's cutting a blitzing linebacker. So the linebacker has a little bit of speed, and he's right in the middle of the pocket, and he's stepping up, and he's getting the guy on the ground, but it's almost sending shrapnel into the quarterback's legs, James. And I wonder, is that something you guys ever talk about in terms of, hey, it's okay to cut on this area of the field, but we don't necessarily want to do it here? Or is it just, we got to get that guy down at all costs. It doesn't matter how you do it. What's your philosophy on that? What do you remember Josh McDaniels' philosophy on that being?
For us, typically you wouldn't want to do it in the A gap because, between the guard and the center, because that's a lot of time where the quarterback's setting up to throw the football. Because if you cut them, then typically the guy's flipping or falling right at the quarterback's feet. So yeah, that's the area where you would try not to do it, most of the time. But at times you get stuck in some precarious situations where you got no big linebacker, full head of steam. You don't have much room to react, so that's your first reaction to cut them. So, yeah, that would be the one rule when it comes to cutting. But like I said, you got to just kind of know your personnel. Depends on who you're matching up against to where they may allow it. If you're blocking a bigger guy and, you're smaller like myself, a guy's 260 pounds, coming downhill through the A-gap, yeah, there's going to be a time for the cut. But I think it's always kind of game plan specific. But when you're in between those A-gaps, I know for us at the time, we typically didn't do that too much.
James White, thank you so much for sharing so much intel with us, especially you're about to head out to the practice field. Big game, Illinois against Washington this weekend, so good luck with that, and we'll see how TreVeyon Henderson is able to grow throughout the course of this year. Hey, maybe it's as early as this weekend against the Cleveland Browns. James White, thanks so much again, buddy. Great to see you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Coming up on Next Pats, we're talking who's next. Let's look at a pair of potential Patriots draft picks next spring. We're also talking a little bit of Will Campbell. How's the number 4 overall pick perform through 7 games? It's all coming up next on Next Pats. Welcome back to Next Pats. Let's get to our Who's Next segment. This is where we're talking about draft prospects in the 2026 NFL Draft and guys that might be able to specifically help your New England Patriots, and specifically in the early rounds. It seems like we talk about receivers every single week. And this week will be no different because we're talking about Chris Bell, the wide receiver from Louisville. And if you watched Chris Bell and those Louisville Cardinals against Miami last week, you know this guy can play. 6'2", 220 pounds, the definition of a yak monster during this Halloween season. All kinds of appropriate that we would be talking about a yak monster right now because he is physical, he's explosive, he can be a vertical threat for you as well. He might not be the most refined route runner you've ever seen, but maybe he can grow into that part of playing receiver at the next level while he's at the next level, because right now what he is in terms of the physical traits is a guy who ran a 22.5 second 200 meter in high school. This guy can scoot with that frame. It's working as things stand. 10 catches for 135 yards and a touchdown against Pitt, 12 catches for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns against UVA, and then that Miami game, 9 grabs, 136 in terms of the receiving yardage, and 2 more scores earlier this month. This is the kind of player who, especially in an offense where you might see more West Coast concepts moving forward, could really light it up. Is he your Deebo Samuel? Guy who obviously helped change the game when he was inserted into that Kyle Shanahan scheme in San Francisco as a yards after catch threat, not thought of as the greatest route runner coming out of South Carolina back in 2019. But can Chris Bell maybe even be a bigger and maybe even more explosive version of that type of player? That's the archetype that we're talking about here with Chris Bell, an intriguing candidate to be added to the Patriots next spring. Our next player in our Who's Next segment this week is TreVeyon III, left tackle out of Texas A&M. Now you're saying to yourself, left tackle? I thought the Patriots already had one of those. Well, turns out, tell me if you've heard this before, he looks like more of a guard at the next level, due in part to his length. And that's something the Patriots might be able to use. Remember, Jared Wilson was a center at Georgia. It feels as though he could still be, even though he's playing every snap at left guard right now, he could still be the center of the future for the New England Patriots. So are you looking for somebody to be that left guard of the future between Wilson and Campbell? To me, Zune would be a real candidate to play in that kind of role for New England. 6'7", 315 pounds, and he is the kind of player in terms of his efficiency, but also his character, that I think Mike Vrabel would really love. Let's get to the efficiency first. He is, as things stand right now, the highest graded draft-eligible pass-blocking tackle in college football, according to Pro Football Focus. He's allowed 1 sack to this point in the season, only 4 total pressures. That's on 208 total dropbacks. That is excellent across the board. No sacks for this group. And he's a captain for this team at Texas A&M. They had all 5 guys on that offensive line returning in 2025. They haven't allowed a sack in the last 2 games against Florida and Arkansas. Zune is a big part of that. He's also played 35 snaps at center this year, so you already have seen him kick inside and be able to handle some different types of players on the interior. Now let's get to the character. TreVeyon has been named to the Jason Witten Collegiate Man of the Year watch list. This is an award that every single year is honoring leadership, integrity, and courage on and off the field. That sounds like a Vrabel type to me. He could be a Patriots pick next spring. Speaking of the offensive line, instead of diving into the mailbag, got the written version of that on NBCSportsBoston.com. As always, make sure you can go and check that out if you haven't already. But there is one Patriots offensive lineman that we all should be watching extremely closely when the Patriots host the Cleveland Browns this coming weekend. And of course, it's Will Campbell, who has the unfortunate opportunity, let's call it what it is, to see arguably the best pass rusher in football aligning across from him on a regular basis in Myles Garrett. Unlike Max Crosby, unlike TJ Watt, Myles Garrett loves to align on the offensive left side of the line. Those other guys and some of the best pass rushers in football, quite frankly, like to line up across from right tackles. Not the case this week. Myles Garrett still as good as ever. 13 quick pressures this season. That's tied for 5th in the NFL. And remember, a quick pressure is a pressure that occurs in 2.5 seconds or less from the time the ball is snapped. His 7.1 quick pressure rate, according to Next Gen Stats, that's the 8th highest among all edge rushers with at least 100 rushes this season. He has developed an inside move this season that feels as though it's borderline unstoppable. The amount of ground he can eat up because of his length and because of his athleticism and his explosiveness. He simply, as Will Campbell told me earlier this week, does some things that other guys can't do. Now, Will Campbell did hold his own against a premier pass rusher who does like to align on the left, and Joey Bosa back in Buffalo earlier this season, the win of the season to this point for the New England Patriots, didn't allow a sack, allowed just 2 pressures, and that week he was the 10th best graded left tackle according to Pro Football Focus. So that's a player who's playing well this year. Joey Bosa, when he's out there and he's rushing the passer, he has been efficient, and Will Campbell handled it. And he has, for the most part, handled his job this season. 14th, according to PFF, when it comes to run blocking grade. 14th when it comes to pass blocking grade. This is among left tackles in the NFL. And he's 15th in terms of his overall offensive grade. You have to love that if you're the New England Patriots. If Will Campbell can be a middle-of-the-road starting left tackle as a rookie, that's a win. It is, and I know it's a small sample size, but through 7 games, it feels as though that pick at number 4 overall that so many people question, and we talked about it so frequently on this podcast and elsewhere, and we tried to give you all, our audience, as much intel as you needed when it came to understanding just how important arm length was or wasn't. Remember that conversation we had with Dante Scarnecchia, who said it's not all about the length. And if you have the technique and you have everything else in terms of intelligence, in terms of toughness, in terms of athleticism, you can be just fine, especially coming out of the, as Scarnecchia likes to call it, the Southeastern Conference, which Will Campbell was and was an All-American in the Southeastern Conference for Louisiana State University. You could be just fine. So far, Will Campbell has been just fine. Wanted to play for you a quick clip from Will Campbell. I asked him earlier this week if he felt as though he had proved the doubters wrong. Here's what he had to say.
I mean, if you want me to be completely honest with you, I was never trying to prove them right. I know that I was chosen here for a reason. So it was never really about proving anybody who said that my arms were too small wrong. I was just coming here to try to help this team. And, just want to keep continuing to do that each and every week in any way that I can. But I'm really not worried about what anybody else has to say.
Still too early to have those short arm related jokes and stuff between us, or no?
Nah, I mean, it was never too early. I don't really, like someone sent in the mail a T-Rex. I don't know where it is, but a plastic T-Rex to my locker, but I thought it was funny.
So there you have it. No victory laps from Will Campbell, at least not yet. He probably understands that it's early. It's only been 7 games, and he probably understands that it hasn't been perfect. It's interesting. If you actually look at some of the numbers from Next Gen Stats, paints a little bit of a different picture than the one we got from Pro Football Focus. According to Next Gen Stats, Campbell has allowed a team-high 27 pressures on 253 pass blocks this season, and 11 of those pressures have been quote-unquote quick. Again, in 2.5 seconds or less. So you're going to have to help him out a little bit. You're going to have to mix up your pitches if you're Josh McDaniels in terms of the types of protections you're calling, whether you want to give him that jam or that slam from the running back or the tight end. That's what they call it in that McDaniels offense. If those guys are chipping on the edge, do you want to slide the protection a certain way? Do you just want to run Drake Maye and roll him out away from Myles Garrett in order to help Will Campbell that way? Those are the kinds of things you have to be thinking about. But if Campbell can maintain this level of play where it looks like he's about a league average tackle at one of the most important positions in football as a rookie, you will take that 10 times out of 10. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Next Pats podcast. Thanks so much to James White for joining us, telling us a little bit about what TreVeyon Henderson is going through in his rookie season, telling us just how impressed he's been by Drake Maye. Great stuff, as always, from James White. Thank you for watching, for listening. We'll be right back here next week to talk about whatever it was that happened between the Patriots and the Browns. We'll be looking ahead as well, as we always do, here on the Next Pats podcast. We'll talk to you next time.